Top 1. Greek fire. Greek fire, the weapon that burned the sea. The year is 672. You're a sailor on an Arab warship. The greatest naval armada ever assembled surrounds Constantinople. Victory is certain. Then the horizon ignites. Liquid fire streams from Byzantine ships. And where it touches water, the ocean itself begins to burn. Your ship is engulfed. Men dive overboard only to watch the flames follow them beneath the waves. You're witnessing a weapon that shouldn't exist for another 1,000 years. And within 3 centuries, its secret will vanish so completely that no one will ever recreate it. This is Greek fire, first deployed by Byzantine Emperor Constantine IV against the Arab siege fleet. It was invented by a Syrian engineer named Kallinikos, who defected to Constantinople. The weapon gave the Byzantine Empire naval supremacy for over 600 years. Then sometime between 1200 and 1300, the formula disappeared from history. Despite centuries of attempts, including modern scientific efforts, no one has successfully recreated true Greek fire. The historical documentation is detailed. Byzantine historian Theophanes the Confessor described it around 815, and Anna Komnena's Alexiad from 1148 provides specifics. The military impact was staggering. Byzantine forces used it to repel 2 major Arab sieges in 674 to 678 and again in 717 to 718, saving Constantinople and possibly all of Europe from conquest. The deployment system launched fire from bronze tubes called siphons mounted on ship bows, creating pressurized streams of flame reaching 10 to 15 meters. Multiple sources describe it burning on water, being impossible to extinguish with water, sticking to wood and flesh, and producing thick black smoke. The formula was classified at the highest Byzantine security level, known only to the imperial family and select military engineers on pain of death. Modern chemist J.R. Partington studied it in 1960, and historian John Halden investigated in 2006, but neither could determine the exact composition. Modern experiments using petroleum-based mixtures, calcium phosphide, or quicklime have approximated some effects but never matched all described properties simultaneously. Historians generally believe Greek fire was a petroleum-based mixture, possibly containing crude oil, pine resin, sulfur, and quicklime, pressurized and ignited. The formula was lost because it was so closely guarded that when the Byzantine Empire fell in 1453, the secret died with it. Just another case of knowledge lost during political collapse. Nothing unusual about that. But if it was just oil and sulfur, why hasn't anyone recreated it in 800 years? Modern chemists have access to every substance the Byzantines possibly could have used, plus detailed historical descriptions of its properties. Yet no combination produces all the effects: burning on water, adhesion, water resistance, and safe storage and deployment. Some historians note that Greek fire's effectiveness may have been exaggerated by Byzantine propagandists, but that doesn't explain why the Byzantines themselves stopped using it, or why Arab, Venetian, and Genoese spies who devoted enormous resources to stealing the formula all failed completely. What if Greek fire wasn't just chemistry, but chemistry plus engineering, a delivery system so sophisticated that the formula alone was useless? Perhaps it required specific pressure mechanisms, mixing ratios achieved mid-deployment, or catalysts that only activated under certain conditions. The technology might have been deliberately compartmentalized. One group knew the formula, another built the siphons, a third understood the deployment. When any link broke, the whole system died. Or perhaps there's a darker possibility. The formula was so dangerous to produce or store that the Byzantines themselves decided to erase it. Some medieval sources hint that Greek fire production facilities were disaster zones with explosions and toxic fumes. What if the technology worked too well? So well, it became too risky to maintain. Why did Byzantine emperors choose to let the formula die rather than pass it on to successor states or allies? If it was petroleum-based, why did Arab chemists who invented distillation and had access to superior petroleum sources never match or surpass it? What happened to the production facilities, the siphons, the surviving caches of the substance itself? From naval fire that conquered the seas, we descend into the earth to a mechanism so advanced it shouldn't exist for another millennium. Top 2, the Antikythera mechanism. The Antikythera mechanism, the computer that shouldn't exist, circa 170 years before the Common Era, somewhere in the workshop of an unknown Greek engineer on the island of Rhodes. Picture a device the size of a shoebox. Inside, 30 bronze gears mesh with mathematical precision, tracking the sun, moon, and planets across the sky. It predicts eclipses decades in advance. It accounts for the irregular orbit of the moon. It even compensates for the Olympic Games calendar. This is not a 20th century orrery. This is the Antikythera mechanism, built 2,100 years ago, and nothing remotely like it would be created again until medieval clockmakers emerged 1,400 years later. Discovered in 1901 by sponge divers exploring a Roman shipwreck off the Greek island of Antikythera. The wreck dated to 70 to 60 years before the Common Era, carrying luxury goods likely destined for Rome. Among the statues and pottery sat a corroded lump of bronze. For decades, it was ignored. Then in 1951, Yale professor Derek de Solla Price began studying it seriously. His 1974 paper, Gears from the Greeks, revealed it was a sophisticated astronomical calculator. Modern CT scanning by the Antikythera Mechanism Research Project from 2005 to 2021 has revealed even more astonishing complexity. The ancient Greeks supposedly had no gear technology beyond simple mills. The Antikythera mechanism contains differential gears, a technology invented in the 1700s for clockmaking. It's as if archaeologists found a smartphone in a Viking burial mound. X-ray CT scans from 2006 by Tony Freeth and the research project revealed at least 30 surviving gears, with estimates suggesting the original had 37 to 40 gears total. It contains a planetary gear system, epicyclic gearing, that wouldn't appear in Western technology again until 1575, a 1,675-year gap. The astronomical precision is staggering. It tracks the Metonic cycle, a 19-year lunar calendar, the Callipic cycle of 76 years, the Saros cycle for 18-year eclipse prediction, and the Exeligmos cycle of 54 years. It includes a pin and slot mechanism to account for the moon's elliptical orbit, applying Hipparchus's astronomical theories from 140 before the Common Era. In mechanical form, the manufacturing precision required gear teeth that were triangular, hand-cut with tolerances under 0.5 millimeter, requiring tools and expertise that weren't supposed to exist. The device contains over 3,500 characters of ancient Greek text, an instruction manual explaining its operation, only partially recovered. No ancient text describes such a device. The closest reference is Cicero's mention in the 1st century, before the Common Era of Archimedes building a similar sphere that showed planetary motions. But that device was lost. Archaeologists acknowledge the Antikythera mechanism represents the pinnacle of Hellenistic engineering. It was likely built by followers of Archimedes or the mathematician Hipparchus. The reason nothing similar survived is simple. Bronze was too valuable. When devices broke or their owners died, they were melted down for reuse. We only have this one because it sank in a shipwreck. The technology existed, but it was rare, expensive, and non-essential. Luxury items for wealthy patrons, not practical tools. When the Roman Empire shifted focus from Greek philosophy to conquest and administration, this kind of sophisticated craftsmanship simply stopped being made. But that explanation requires us to believe that a technology this advanced was created once, maybe twice, then totally forgotten. No other gears, no workshops, no training schools, no failed prototypes. The Antikythera mechanism represents at least a century of iterative development. You don't create a 30-gear differential computer on your first try. There should be simpler predecessors, cruder attempts, yet there are none. The mechanism also reveals something troubling. Whoever built it understood astronomy and mathematics that, according to our historical timeline, shouldn't have been formalized yet. The lunar anomaly correction suggests knowledge of elliptical orbits, an idea not officially grasped until Kepler in the 1600s. And there's the silence. If this technology was known even to an elite few, why is there no record? No boast from emperors, No philosophical debates about it. No mentions in engineering treatises. What if the Antikythera mechanism is the only survivor of a much larger tradition of mechanical engineering? A tradition that was deliberately or accidentally erased? Some researchers argue that Hellenistic science reached heights we've systematically underestimated, and that much of it was lost when the Library of Alexandria burned, and when Rome prioritized military conquest over pure research. Others point to the bronze scarcity explanation. But flip it. Maybe these devices were common enough that no one thought to write about them, just as we don't write detailed treatises about calculators today. Only when the knowledge was lost did their absence become notable. The darker possibility is that this technology was seen as dangerous or heretical by later Christian authorities who associated complex mechanical devices with pagan mysticism, leading to active suppression. Where are the workshops, the tools, the training techs that would have been needed to build such devices? Why does this level of mechanical engineering vanish completely for 1,400 years? Not a slow decline, but a vanish. If Archimedes built a similar device as Cicero claimed, where is it? And how many others existed? From mechanisms lost beneath the sea, we turn to metal forged in fire. Top 3, Damascus steel. Steel so legendary that modern science took 300 years to understand it. Damascus steel, the blade that cannot be remade. Circa 300 to 1750 years of the Common Era. The forges of Damascus, where swordsmiths heated crucibles of Indian wootz steel. Run your finger along the blade. The surface ripples like water frozen in metal. These aren't scratches, they're swirling patterns called damask, and they reveal a structure that shouldn't be possible with medieval technology. Damascus steel could split a falling silk scarf, cut through European swords like butter, and hold an edge so sharp it bordered on the supernatural. Crusaders feared it. European smiths tried for centuries to copy it. Then around 1750, the technique vanished. And despite 250 years of modern metallurgical science, we've only recently understood why these blades were so superior. Damascus steel weapons were crafted primarily in the Middle East from 300 to 1750 using imported wootz steel from India. The steel's reputation peaked during the Crusades from 1095 to 1291, where Islamic blades routinely outperformed European swords. By the 1700s, production mysteriously ceased. The last known blades were made around 1750 to 1800. In 1973, Stanford professor Oleg Sherby began modern analysis. In 2006, electron microscope studies by Peter Pofler at the University of Dresden revealed the secret. Carbon nanotubes and cementite nanowires, structures not invented in the West until the 1990s. Medieval smiths working with charcoal forges and hand tools created a steel microstructure containing nanotech-level engineering. Carbon nanotubes, cylindrical molecules 1/1000th of a meter wide, and cementite nanowires gave the steel incredible strength and flexibility. This wasn't discovered in modern material science until 1991, when Ijima published his carbon nanotube paper. Yet it existed in swords made 2,300 years earlier. The 2006 study by Pofler and colleagues in Nature used transmission electron microscopy to identify carbon nanotubes and cementite nanowires in genuine Damascus steel samples. Historical accounts describe blades that could cut through rifle barrels, slice silk scarves midair, and maintain sharpness after repeated use. Tests replicated on surviving authentic blades confirm these claims. The distinctive watered silk damask pattern is caused by carbide banding at the micro level visible to the naked eye, a quality control marker smiths use to verify proper forging. The steel came from crucible steel produced in India, particularly the Hyderabad region, with specific impurities like vanadium, tungsten, and chromium that acted as catalysts for nanotube formation. Forging required repeated heating to specific temperature ranges, 900 to 1,200 degrees, and slow cooling cycles. Knowledge transmitted orally through master-apprentice lineages. 12th century Arab historian Ibn al-Athir wrote that Crusader swords shattered against Damascus blades. European knights documented capturing and treasuring Islamic weapons. Around 1750, Indian wootz steel sources dried up, mines exhausted or trade routes disrupted, And within one generation, the knowledge of forging true Damascus steel was lost. Metallurgists now understand that Damascus steel's properties came from a combination of specific raw materials, Indian woods with trace elements, and precise heat treatment. The Smiths didn't know they were creating nanotubes. They just followed traditional techniques passed down for centuries. When the supply of proper wood steel ended in the 1700s, European steel from different ore sources couldn't replicate the effect, and the technique died out. No mystery, just resource depletion ending a craft tradition. Modern bladesmiths have successfully recreated pattern-welded Damascus-style steel, though purists argue it's not identical to historical Wootz-based Damascus. But why couldn't the technique adapt? European smiths had been trying to copy Damascus steel for 400 years during the Crusades. They had access to captured blades, defecting craftsmen, and metallurgical treatises. Yet they never succeeded, not even close. And the loss wasn't gradual. Within one generation, roughly 1750 to 1800, the knowledge vanished so completely that by 1900, experts debated whether the historical accounts were exaggerated. The 2006 nanotube discovery proved the legends were real, if anything understated. What's suspicious is the completeness of the erasure. Forged techniques usually evolve and spread. This one stopped dead, as if a critical piece of knowledge was deliberately withheld. Some researchers note that Damascus blades were status symbols for Islamic nobility. Their manufacture may have been restricted to prevent enemies from accessing the technology. What if the loss wasn't accidental, but strategic? By the 1700s, firearms had made swords increasingly obsolete for warfare. Perhaps the last master smiths recognized their craft was becoming ceremonial rather than military, and in an era where guilds fiercely protected trade secrets, they may have chosen to let the knowledge die rather than debase it by mass production or sale to colonial powers. Alternatively, some metallurgists suggest the true Damascus technique may not be entirely lost. Secretive lineages of bladesmiths in India, Syria, or Iran may still possess the knowledge but have no economic incentive to reveal it. Why did no one successfully replicate the technique during the 400 years when Damascus blades dominated warfare? Were there other applications of this nanotube forming process beyond weapons that we've completely missed? If modern bladesmiths have recreated Damascus steel, why can't they replicate the exact same performance as historical blades? From steel forged in fire, we turn to stone mixed with water. Top 4, Roman concrete. A formula so resilient, it has outlasted the empire that built it. Roman concrete, the formula that outlasted an empire. Circa 200 years before the Common Era to 500 years of the Common Era. The volcanic shores of the Bay of Naples, where Roman engineers mixed pozzolana ash with lime and seawater, stand beneath the Pantheon's dome. It's 142 feet across, made entirely of unreinforced concrete, and it's been standing for 2,000 years. No cracks, no reinforcement, no collapse. Now walk outside and look at a modern highway overpass built in the 1960s with steel-reinforced concrete. It's already crumbling, riddled with cracks, scheduled for replacement. Roman concrete structures, especially those in seawater, are getting stronger with age. Ours fall apart in decades. The Romans had a formula we lost for over 1,500 years, and only now, with electron microscopes and seabed drilling, are we beginning to understand why their concrete worked so much better than ours? Roman concrete, opus cementitium, was the foundation of Rome's architectural dominance from 200 BCE to 500 CE. The recipe was documented by Vitruvius in De Architectura from 15 BCE and Pliny the Elder in Natural History from 77 CE. But their instructions were incomplete or misunderstood. After Rome's fall, the technique was gradually forgotten, and medieval Europe returned to stonemasonry. In 2013, researchers at the University of California, Berkeley, and the Italian National Research Council began analyzing samples from Roman harbor structures, revealing the self-healing properties of the concrete. In 2023, a team led by MIT's Admir Masig finally cracked the secret: hot mixing. Roman concrete submerged in seawater for 2,000 years has grown stronger, forming crystalline structures that fill cracks. Modern concrete in seawater begins disintegrating within 50 years. The Romans achieved this without steel reinforcement, without modern chemistry, without chemical admixtures, using only volcanic ash, lime, seawater, and rocks. The Pantheon's dome from 126 CE is still the world's largest unreinforced concrete dome. Roman harbors at Caesarea and Puteoli, aqueducts, and the Colosseum's foundation are all structurally sound after 1,800 to 2,000 years. A 2017 study by Marie Jackson at the University of Utah, published in American Mineralogists, found that seawater reacts with volcanic ash to grow aluminum tobermorite crystals, which strengthen the concrete and fill microcracks. Vitruvius specified a mixture of 1 part lime to 3 parts pozzolana volcanic ash, plus seawater and aggregate, but didn't explain the critical hot mixing technique. 2013 studies analyzed cores from a 2,000-year-old breakwater in Caesarea, Israel. Mineral analysis showed the concrete had become more cohesive over time, not degraded. The 2023 MIT study led by Masick, published in Science Advances, found that Romans used quicklime, not slaked lime, creating exothermic reactions during mixing that produced lime class, previously thought to be impurities, but actually the key to self-healing. The Romans used pozzolana from specific volcanic regions around Naples, rich in silica and alumina, creating unique chemical reactions. Researchers in 2017 created experimental concrete using Roman techniques. Samples showed crack healing after seawater exposure, confirming ancient effectiveness. Civil engineers now recognize that Roman concrete succeeded due to a combination of factors. The use of volcanic pozzolana creates a hydraulic cement that hardens underwater. Seawater's mineral content reacts with the pozzolana to form durable crystals. The absence of steel reinforcement prevents rust expansion that causes cracks in modern concrete. The formula was lost because it was regionally specific. When the Roman Empire fell, access to Italian volcanic ash disappeared for most of Europe. Medieval builders in France, England, or Germany couldn't use the technique because they didn't have deposits. By the time Europe reunified under colonial empires, Portland cement, invented in 1824, was cheaper and faster. So no one bothered reviving the Roman method. No conspiracy, just economics and resource geography. But that doesn't explain why modern engineers, who do have access to volcanic ash, computational modeling, and centuries of material science, took until 2023 to figure out the hot mixing technique. Roman engineers working with empirical trial and error achieved a concrete formula superior to modern formulations for marine environments. The fact that we're only now rediscovering their technique means we've been building inferior infrastructure for 200 years. Bridges, dams, and ports that will crumble in a fraction of the time Roman structures have lasted. And there's a darker question: why wasn't this pursued sooner? Studies on Roman concrete's self-healing properties were published in 2013. It took another decade before anyone investigated the lime class. Modern concrete is a trillion-dollar industry. Steel-reinforced concrete requires constant maintenance and replacement, which benefits construction companies. If we switch to a Roman-style formula that lasts 2,000 years, entire sectors of the economy would lose their business model. What if the loss of Roman concrete wasn't accidental, but structural? The formula required volcanic ash from specific regions and skilled mixing. The hot mixing technique is dangerous. Quicklime is caustic and highly reactive, and it has a long curing time. Modern construction demands speed and standardization. Roman concrete takes longer to set, can't be poured in freezing weather, and requires natural materials that aren't uniformly available. Portland cement, by contrast, can be manufactured anywhere, sets quickly, and works in all climates. The Roman method may have been lost not because the knowledge disappeared, but because it was economically impractical for industrial-scale construction. Alternatively, some researchers suggest the formula was never entirely lost. Monastic orders and Renaissance architects may have preserved fragments of the knowledge, but without understanding the chemistry, they couldn't adapt it to non-volcanic regions. Why did medieval European builders completely abandon Roman hydraulic concrete, even in regions with pozzolana deposits like Italy? How many Roman construction techniques are still lost because we haven't bothered to analyze surviving structures thoroughly? If we've only now cracked the self-healing secret, What other properties of Roman concrete remain undiscovered? From ancient formulas buried in stone, we leap forward to the 20th century, where a modern material demonstrated on live television vanished with its inventor's death. Top 5. Starlight, the heat shield that disappeared. 1990s, a garage in Yorkshire, England, where an amateur chemist mixed a paste that defied physics. Picture this: a blowtorch flame at 100 degrees aimed directly at an egg. The egg should explode in seconds. Instead, after 5 minutes, the eggshell is cool enough to touch. The secret? A thin coating of a beige paste called Starlight, invented by a hairdresser named Maurice Ward. NASA wanted it. The military wanted it. Fire departments worldwide wanted it. But Maurice Ward died in 2011, and the formula died with him. No samples remain. No patents reveal the full recipe. One of the most significant thermal protection materials ever demonstrated simply ceased to exist. In 1993, Maurice Ward appeared on BBC's Tomorrow's World, a popular science show. Host Peter McCann subjected starlight-coated materials to extreme heat tests live on television. A starlight-coated egg withstood a blowtorch. A starlight-coated panel survived direct flame without damage, while the reverse side remained cool. NASA tested samples and confirmed the material worked. The UK's Atomic Weapons Establishment at Foulness Island subjected it to a nuclear flash simulator, equivalent heat to an atomic blast. The starlight coating survived. The uncoated steel behind it vaporized. Despite this, Ward refused to license or sell the formula, citing fears of corporate theft. He died in 2011, reportedly taking the secret to his grave. His family claims to possess the formula, but has never produced it commercially. Starlight was an organic polymer-based material, not ceramic, not metal, that could withstand temperatures exceeding 10,000 degrees, equivalent to the surface of the sun, without charring, cracking, or conducting heat. It was lightweight, paintable, and non-toxic. Modern ablative heat shields for spacecraft char away. Starlight didn't ablate. It formed an insulating barrier. No material in commercial production today matches its demonstrated performance. The 1993 BBC broadcast showed a starlight-coated egg surviving a direct blowtorch flame at 100 degrees for over 5 minutes. The eggshell remained intact and cool to the touch. Ward provided samples to NASA's White Sands testing facility. The material withstood temperatures up to 10,000 degrees during laser testing. NASA confirmed the results, but Ward wouldn't negotiate licensing terms. The 1993 test at Foulness Island subjected Starlight to a nuclear flash simulator, producing a 2,500 degrees instant heat burst. The coated side survived, the uncoated steel side vaporized. Ward filed patents but deliberately omitted key ingredients. He claimed the formula involved 21 organic polymers and copolymers, but never revealed precise ratios or processing methods. Ward's daughters, Danielle and Rebecca Ward, stated in 2018 interviews that they possess the formula in a safety deposit box, but haven't commercialized it due to financial and legal obstacles. Boeing, the UK Ministry of Defense, and fire safety companies all attempted to negotiate with Ward. He rejected all offers, fearing the formula would be reverse-engineered and he'd lose control. All tested samples were either consumed during tests or returned to Ward. After his death, no verifiable Starlight samples have surfaced for independent analysis. Material scientists acknowledge Starlight worked as demonstrated, but argue that intumescent coatings, materials that expand when heated, forming insulating char layers with similar properties, have been developed independently. Modern ceramic matrix composites, aerogels, and ablative heat shields can achieve comparable thermal protection for specific applications. Starlight may have been exceptional, but Ward's refusal to share it meant the technology couldn't be optimized, tested at scale, or integrated into real-world systems. The scientific community moved on. His secrecy was his downfall. If he'd patented and licensed it properly, Starlight might have saved lives in building fires, spacecraft re-entries, and industrial applications. Instead, it became a footnote. But that explanation ignores the specificity of what was lost. Modern ablative shields char away. They're consumable, single-use. Starlight didn't. Modern ceramic heat shields are brittle, heavy, and expensive. Starlight was a paintable paste anyone could apply. The NASA tests weren't publicity stunts. They were rigorous, controlled experiments. and NASA officials went on record calling it the most significant material in decades. If comparable materials existed, why did Boeing, NASA, and military contractors spend years trying to acquire Starlight specifically? And there's the timing. Ward's death in 2011 coincided with a surge in private space travel. For SpaceX or Blue Origin, a reusable, lightweight, non-ablative heat shield would be worth billions. The fact that his family claims to have the formula but won't release it, citing fear of corporate exploitation, suggests the real obstacle isn't technical but economic and legal. Who benefits from Starlight staying buried? What if Ward's paranoia was justified? In the 1990s, several inventors of revolutionary materials, including superconductors and advanced polymers, filed patents only to have corporations reverse engineer their work and flood the market with similar products, bypassing royalties. Ward may have seen this coming and decided that incomplete fame was better than being swindled. Alternatively, some material scientists speculate that Starlight's formula may have been unstable or toxic in ways not revealed during short-term testing. Ward himself was a hairdresser, not a chemist, so he may have stumbled onto the formula without understanding long-term degradation or health risks. If true, his refusal to license it may have been self-preservation, not greed. The darkest theory is that governments and aerospace contractors did acquire enough information to replicate Starlight, but classified it for military applications, allowing the public story to die with Ward while using the technology in secret. If Ward's family truly has the formula, why haven't they released it to universities or nonprofits, bypassing corporate control? Did NASA or other testing agencies retain enough data from their experiments to reverse engineer Starlight? Are there existing fireproof coatings in military or aerospace used that derive from Starlight but remain classified? From modern heat shields lost to paranoia, we return to the ancient world where glass bent without breaking, and an emperor's fear killed the inventor. Top 6. Flexible glass. Flexible glass, the innovation that terrified an emperor, circa 20 to 30 years of the Common Era. The court of Roman Emperor Tiberius on the island of Capri. Imagine standing before the Emperor of Rome holding a bowl made of glass. You drop it. The bowl hits the marble floor with a metallic clang and doesn't shatter. Instead, it dents like beaten silver. You pick it up, press the dent out with your thumb, and present it to Tiberius, flawless once more. This is your moment of triumph, the invention that will make you rich beyond measure. But Tiberius doesn't applaud. He asks a single question. Does anyone else know how to make this? You answer, no, Caesar. Only I possess the secret. And with that, Tiberius orders your execution. The formula for flexible glass dies with you, erased to protect Rome's economy. The story of vitrum flexile, flexible glass, appears in multiple Roman sources. Pliny the Elder's Natural History from 77 CE, Petronius's Satyricon from the 1st century, and Dio Cassius's Roman History from the 3rd century. All three accounts describe a glassmaker who invented unbreakable glass and presented it to Emperor Tiberius, who ruled from 14 to 37 CE. The details vary slightly, but the core narrative is consistent. The inventor was executed and the technology was suppressed because Tiberius feared it would devalue gold and silver, which were prized partly for their durability in dishware and luxury goods. No examples of flexible glass have ever been found archaeologically. The material, if it existed, vanished completely. The Romans had glass-blowing technology and could produce high-quality glass vessels, mosaics, and windows. But flexible, dent-resistant glass that behaves like metal shouldn't be possible with Roman-era material science. Modern tempered glass is strong but still shatters. Modern polymers like polycarbonate plastics can be transparent and flexible, but they require 20th century petrochemical engineering. If vitrum flexile existed, it represents a material science breakthrough that wouldn't be matched until the invention of Gorilla Glass in 2006, a 2,000-year gap. Pliny the Elder's account in Natural History Book 36 describes a glassmaker brought before Tiberius with a file drinking bowl that, when dropped, dented like bronze but didn't break. The craftsman hammered out the dent, and was executed after admitting only he knew the technique. Petronius's Satyricon features a similar story in the character Trimalchio's banquet scene, where a guest mentions a glassmaker who made goblets that wouldn't break. Petronius writes this as a humorous anecdote, suggesting the story was well-known folklore by 60 CE. Dio Cassius in Roman history. Book 57 repeats the tale almost verbatim to Pliny, confirming it was a circulating legend by the 3rd century. Dio, however, treats it more skeptically, noting if true as a qualifier. Despite thousands of excavated Roman glass fragments from 1st century contexts, no examples of flexible, dent-resistant glass have been found, suggesting either the story is mythical or the suppression was absolute. Roman glassmaking was a luxury industry, but gold and silver vessels were 10 to 100 times more valuable than glass. Unbreakable glass would crater the precious metal dishware market, harming imperial revenue and elite wealth. No records suggest anyone attempted to recreate flexible glass, a suspicious silence if the story were widely believed. Gorilla Glass from 2006 by Corning Incorporated is chemically strengthened alkali aluminosilicate glass that resists shattering, but it's not flexible or dent-resistant like Vitrum flexile is described. Historians and material scientists generally treat the Vitrum flexile story as legend or exaggeration. The most likely explanation is that the glassmaker invented an early form of tempered or annealed glass, which is more resistant to shattering than regular glass, and the tale grew in the retelling. The denting-like metal detail may be pure fabrication added to make the story more dramatic. As for the execution, it fits Tiberius's paranoid reputation. He was known for erratic cruelty. So the core anecdote, an inventor killed for threatening economic interests, may be true, but the material itself was probably just unusually strong glass, not the magical, flexible substance later sources describe. The story persisted because it's a perfect morality tale about innovation versus power. But why does this same story appear in 3 independent sources spanning 200 years? Pliny the Elder was a careful naturalist who documented hundreds of materials and techniques. He wouldn't casually repeat wild fabrications. And if it was just strong glass, why the need for execution? The Romans valued innovation. They rewarded engineers who built better aqueducts, weapons, and architecture. Why would Tiberius kill someone for making durable dishware unless the material was so revolutionary it truly threatened economic stability? There's also a technological gap to consider. The Romans had access to advanced chemistry. They could make concrete, purple dye from murex snails, and complex metal alloys. Is it impossible they stumbled onto a glass formulation, perhaps involving organic additives or unique tempering, that modern science hasn't replicated because we've never looked for it? What if Vitrum flexile was real, but the story was deliberately mythologized to obscure the truth? Some materials historians suggest the glassmaker may have used a composite material, perhaps glass fibers woven into an organic matrix, creating something that looked like glass but behaved like flexible metal. This would be analogous to modern fiberglass or carbon fiber composites. The Romans had access to plant resins, animal glues, and fine metalworking. A layered or woven material isn't impossible. The execution story could be a cover. Perhaps Tiberius confiscated the formula, classified it for military use, imagined flexible, transparent shields, and spread the execution rumor to prevent rival powers from seeking it. Alternatively, the suppression may have been economic but collective. If glassmakers themselves realized flexible glass would destroy their industry, they might have united to bury the technique, scapegoating Tiberius as the villain. If the story is purely mythical, why does it persist across multiple independent historians rather than appearing as a single fantastical claim? Could modern archaeologists identify fragments of flexible glass if they exist, or would they be misclassified as standard Roman glass? Were there other Roman-era material innovations that were deliberately suppressed or lost, leaving only legendary traces? From ancient glass erased by imperial fear, we leap to the 20th century, where electromagnetic power, not metallurgy, promised to revolutionize the world until a financier pulled the plug. Top 7. Tesla's Wardenclyffe Tower. Tesla's Wardenclyffe Tower, the dream of wireless power, 1901 to 1917, Shoreham, Long Island, where a 187-foot tower stood unfinished, reaching toward the impossible. Imagine a world with no power lines, no cables strung across continents, no plugs, no outlets, just free energy transmitted wirelessly through the Earth itself to anyone, anywhere. This was Nikola Tesla's vision, and in 1901 he began building it. Wardenclyffe Tower was designed to broadcast electricity across the globe, powering homes, factories, and cities without a single wire. J.P. Morgan, the wealthiest banker in America, funded it. Then in 1903, Morgan pulled the funding. The tower was never completed. In 1917, it was demolished for scrap metal. Tesla died broke in 1943, watching his dream erased from history. Today, we transmit data wirelessly, but still run power through wires, exactly the system Tesla tried to make obsolete 120 years ago. Nikola Tesla, already famous for inventing AC power systems in the Tesla coil, proposed wireless power transmission in the late 1890s. In 1901, J.P. Morgan invested $150,000, about $5 million today, to build Wardenclyffe Tower on Long Island as a combined wireless telegraphy and power transmission station. Tesla designed it to use the Earth's ionosphere as a conductor, resonating at specific frequencies to transmit energy globally. Construction began in 1901. But by 1903, Morgan withdrew funding after learning Marconi had successfully demonstrated transatlantic radio communication, a cheaper, more profitable technology. Tesla couldn't secure additional investors. The tower stood incomplete until 1917 when the U.S. government ordered its demolition, fearing it could be used as a German spy station during World War I. The site became a peerless photo products factory. In 2013, a crowdfunding campaign preserved the land as the Tesla Science Center. Tesla claimed Wardenclyffe could transmit megawatts of power wirelessly with minimal loss across thousands of miles using resonant frequencies to couple energy into the Earth's crust and ionosphere. This defies modern electrical engineering, which calculates that wireless power transmission over long distances incurs catastrophic efficiency losses, inverse square law, and would require impossibly high voltages. Yet Tesla demonstrated small-scale wireless power transfer successfully, lighting bulbs at a distance without wires, suggesting he understood principles mainstream physics said were impossible. Tesla filed U.S. Patent 642/2076, System of Transmission of Electrical Energy, from 1900 and Patent 649/621, Apparatus for Transmission of Electrical Energy, from 1900, describing wireless power using earth resonance. In 1899, Tesla built a massive coil laboratory in Colorado Springs, generating artificial lightning bolts over 135 feet long and successfully lighting 200 light bulbs wirelessly at a distance of 26 miles, documented in his Colorado Springs notes from 1899 to 1900. The tower was 187 feet tall, topped with a 55-ton metal dome designed to transmit at 150 kilohertz frequency. Tesla calculated this matched Earth's natural resonant frequency. Morgan's initial investment of $150,000 was secured in 1901 with an agreement to fund a global wireless system. Morgan later withdrew because Marconi beat Tesla to transatlantic radio, and wireless power meant no way to meter and sell electricity, unprofitable for utilities. In 1917, the U.S. military ordered the tower destroyed during World War I, citing national security. The metal was sold for scrap, raising only $1,750, a fraction of construction costs. Today's wireless charging for phones and electric cars works over inches or feet with 80% efficiency. Long-range wireless power using microwave or laser beaming achieves less than 50% efficiency over miles. Tesla claimed near 100% efficiency globally. Tesla died in debt in 1943 in a New York hotel room. The FBI seized his papers immediately after death, classifying some documents officially to assess their value. But many Tesla researchers believe it was to suppress potentially dangerous technologies. Physicists and electrical engineers are nearly unanimous. Tesla's global wireless power system couldn't work as he envisioned. The inverse square law dictates that electromagnetic radiation disperses with the square of distance, meaning energy transmitted wirelessly over 1,000 miles would scatter into the atmosphere, requiring impossibly high input power to deliver usable amounts. Tesla's Colorado Springs demonstration lit bulbs at 26 miles, But this was resonant inductive coupling in a very specific setup, not scalable to global transmission. Wardenclyffe failed not because J.P. Morgan suppressed it, but because the physics didn't work and Tesla couldn't prove otherwise. Morgan withdrew funding for sound business reasons. Marconi's radio was cheaper and immediately profitable, while Tesla's wireless power had no billing mechanism. The tower's demolition was wartime pragmatism. It was a massive metal structure on the coast during German U-boat threats, not a conspiracy. Tesla was a brilliant inventor, but also prone to grandiose claims he couldn't substantiate. But that narrative ignores several inconvenient facts. First, Tesla's Colorado Springs experiment worked. He did light bulbs 26 miles away wirelessly. Dismissing this as not scalable assumes we fully understand what Tesla was doing, but his notes describe resonance effects in Earth conductivity principles that mainstream physics didn't seriously investigate because the project was abandoned. Second, the business reasons explanation is suspicious. Morgan was already the wealthiest man in America with monopolistic control over electricity utilities via General Electric. Wireless power, if it worked, would destroy his business model by making electricity unmeterable and decentralized. Of course he pulled funding. The question isn't whether it was good business, it's whether Morgan suppressed the technology because it threatened his empire. Third, the FBI's immediate seizure of Tesla's papers after his death, with some remaining classified to this day, suggests the government took his late-stage work seriously. If wireless power was pure pseudoscience, why classify it? What if Tesla's wireless power did work, just not in the way modern physics expects? Some researchers, like engineer James Coram and physicist Constantine Mail, argue Tesla wasn't transmitting electromagnetic radiation, radio waves, but longitudinal waves through the Earth's crust, using the planet as a resonant cavity. This is conceptually different from radio transmission and wouldn't obey the inverse square law. Modern physics largely dismisses longitudinal electromagnetic waves as theoretical curiosities, but Tesla's experiments suggest otherwise. If true, Wardenclyffe's failure wasn't technical, it was financial and political. J.P. Morgan controlled the electrification of America through centralized metered power grids. Wireless power threatened that model. The U.S. government, dependent on Morgan's loans to finance World War I, had every reason to side with him. Wardenclyffe wasn't demolished because it didn't work. It was demolished because it worked too well, and powerful interests ensured it stayed buried. Why did the FBI classify Tesla's papers? And what's in the documents still unreleased 80-plus years after his death? If wireless power is impossible, why do modern experiments with laser power beaming keep inching closer to validating parts of Tesla's vision? What would today's energy infrastructure look like if Wardenclyffe had been completed? And who would that have benefited or harmed? From electricity transmitted through air, we descend into the earth, where 2,000-year-old jars hold a mystery that predates the invention of the battery itself. Top 8. The Baghdad Battery. The Baghdad Battery, electricity before Edison, circa 200 years before the Common Era to 224 years of the Common Era. Kujut Rabu near Baghdad, where Parthian potters buried clay jars with copper and iron. Inside a clay jar, a copper cylinder. Inside the cylinder, an iron rod. Pour in vinegar or acidic wine, and you have a galvanic cell, a battery. The problem, this jar was buried 2,000 years ago near ancient Baghdad in a Parthian village. The official invention of the battery is 1800, when Alessandro Volta presented his voltaic pile to the scientific world. These jars predate Volta by 2 millennia. So what were ancient Mesopotamians doing with electrochemistry? And why does no text, no inscription, no record explain what they used it for? In 1936, Austrian archaeologist Wilhelm König was cataloging artifacts at the Baghdad Museum when he noticed a peculiar set of clay jars from excavations at Kujut Rabu, a Parthian site near Baghdad. The jars dated to 200 BCE to 224 CE. Inside each jar was a copper cylinder, an iron rod suspended inside, not touching the copper, and bitumen, asphalt, sealing the top. König recognized the design immediately. It was a galvanic cell. In 1938, he published a paper proposing they were ancient batteries. During World War II and the Iraq War in 2003, many of the jars were lost or looted from the Baghdad Museum. leaving only a handful in surviving collections. Modern replicas built by mythbusters and researchers at Smith College successfully generated 1 to 2 volts, confirming the design works as a battery. The Baghdad battery predates the discovery of electricity by 2,000 years. Galvani didn't observe animal electricity until 1780. Volta didn't invent the battery until 1800. Yet Parthian craftsmen assembled a device that, when filled with an electrolyte like vinegar, wine, or citrus juice, produces measurable voltage. There's no evidence they understood what they'd built, no texts describing electrical phenomena, no follow-up inventions using electrical current. It's as if someone stumbled onto the formula for gunpowder but only used it to make pretty sparks. At least a dozen clay jars, 14 centimeters tall, were found at Kujut Rabu and other Parthian sites, all with similar construction: terracotta jar, copper cylinder, iron rod, bitumen seal. Archaeological context places them in the Parthian era, 247 BCE to 224 CE. Some researchers argue they could be later Sasanian, 224 to 650 CE, but the consensus is pre-3rd century. Mythbusters in 2005 built replicas using ancient materials and generated 4 volts by connecting 10 jars in series. Smith College experiments from 2010 generated 1.1 volts with vinegar electrolyte. German archaeologist Wilhelm Koenig and later researcher Paul Kaiser proposed the batteries were used for electroplating gold onto silver jewelry, a technique confirmed experimentally by Arne Eggebrecht in 1978, who electroplated a silver statue using a Baghdad battery replica. Other theories suggest religious tingly sensations, electrical shocks for rituals, medicinal shock therapy, or simply accidental design. Jars meant for storing scrolls, with copper and iron just acting as preservatives. No Parthian texts describe electricity, batteries, or galvanism. No workshop sites with multiple batteries or electroplating setups have been found. During 2003 Iraq war looting, most original Baghdad batteries were stolen from the Baghdad Museum. Only a few specimens remain in museums in Baghdad and Germany. Most archaeologists and historians are skeptical the Baghdad battery was intentionally designed as an electrical device. The leading alternative theory is that the jars were used to store sacred scrolls. Copper cylinders protected papyrus, iron rods held them in place, and bitumen sealed out moisture. The battery effect is purely coincidental. If you combine dissimilar metals in an acidic environment, you'll get a voltage whether you intend to or not. The electroplating hypothesis is clever but unproven. No Parthian gold-plated artifacts show the specific electrochemical deposition patterns you'd expect. And if they were using electricity, why is there zero follow-up, no improvements, no widespread adoption, no textual mentions? It was probably just a storage jar that happens to work as a battery when you add vinegar. An accident, not an invention. But that explanation requires ignoring the specificity of the design. The copper cylinder is seamless, rolled and soldered, a labor-intensive process. The iron rod is precisely sized to fit inside without touching the copper, critical for galvanic action. The bitumen seal prevents liquid from leaking. If you were just storing scrolls, why use expensive copper instead of cheap clay or wood? And why suspend an iron rod inside? The construction suggests intentionality. As for electroplating, Arne Eggebrecht's 1978 experiment successfully gold-plated a silver statue using a Baghdad battery setup and ancient techniques, demonstrating the method works. The absence of Parthian texts describing electricity is suspicious but not dispositive. Advanced techniques were often guild secrets transmitted orally. If electroplating gave Parthian jewelers a competitive advantage, they'd guard it fiercely. And there's the broader context. Mesopotamia was the cradle of metallurgy, glassmaking, and astronomy. Is it so impossible they stumbled onto electrochemistry through empirical experimentation? What if the Baghdad battery is evidence of a lost technological lineage? Some researchers point to ancient Egyptian bas-reliefs at Dendera Temple, the Dendera light carvings dated 50 BCE, which depict what look like bulbs or vacuum tubes connected to braided cables. If interpreted literally, highly controversial, they suggest electrical lighting. Could Parthian batteries have been part of a regional electrical technology tradition that was never written down because it was considered artisan knowledge, not philosophy? Alternatively, the batteries might have been used for medical purposes. Ancient Greek and Roman physicians used electric eels and torpedo fish to deliver shocks for pain relief, documented by Pliny and Galen. Parthian healers lacking access to electric fish may have developed galvanic cells as a substitute. The lack of textual evidence could mean the knowledge was restricted to medical or priestly castes, lost when those institutions collapsed during the Sasanian conquest. If the Baghdad battery is just a storage jar, why hasn't anyone found a Parthian scroll stored inside one? Why are all surviving examples constructed identically with the same copper-iron bitumen design if they weren't following a specific functional blueprint? What other accidental technologies from the ancient world have we misidentified because we assume advanced knowledge didn't exist? From electricity lost in clay jars, we shift to stone. Massive blocks moved by a single man using secrets he refused to share. Top 9, Coral Castle, Coral Castle, the megalithic mystery of Florida, 1923 to 1951. Homestead, Florida, where Ed Leedskalnin built a stone monument alone at night. A 5-foot-tall man weighing 100 pounds moves coral blocks weighing up to 30 tons. He does this alone at night, using no modern machinery. When asked how, he smiles and says, "I know the secret of the pyramids." His name was Ed Leedskalnin, and between 1923 and 1951, he single-handedly carved and erected over 100 tons of coral stone into a complex called Coral Castle. The blocks are fitted so tightly that no mortar is needed. The walls are perfectly aligned to astronomical points. And to this day, no one can definitively explain how he did it. He left cryptic writings about magnetism and anti-gravity. But when he died in 1951, the technique died with him. Ed Leedskalnin, a Latvian immigrant, arrived in Florida in the 1920s. Heartbroken after being jilted by his fiancée, Agnes Scuffs, he called her his Sweet 16, he began building a monument to lost love. He worked entirely alone, mostly at night, and allowed no one to observe his methods. Neighbors reported hearing strange humming sounds and seeing lights. In 1936, he moved the entire structure 10 miles to Homestead, Florida, disassembling and reassembling 100 tons of coral stone without heavy equipment. He charged visitors 10 cents for tours and lived on the grounds until his death in 1951. The site is now a museum. Despite decades of study, engineers cannot agree on how he moved the largest stones. Ed Leedskalnin moved single blocks of coral limestone weighing 30 tons, 60,000 lbs, without cranes, trucks, or pulleys. The largest stone, an obelisk, weighs 28 tons and stands 25 feet tall. Modern construction of a Coral Castle replica would require industrial cranes and multi-person crews. Ed did it alone using only hand tools visible in photos: chains, pulleys, and tripods. He claimed to understand magnetic currents and perpetual motion, but left no blueprints or clear instructions. The Coral Castle contains individual stones weighing 5 to 30 tons, including a 9-ton gate so perfectly balanced it rotated with one finger's pressure until it stopped in 1986, requiring a 6-man crew and crane to repair. Despite working for 28 years, Ed Leedskalnin never allowed anyone to watch him move the largest stones. He worked at night and claimed he knew the secret of the pyramids. Photographs show Ed using wooden tripods, chains, and block and tackle pulleys, but engineers calculate these tools alone couldn't lift 30-ton blocks. He must have had additional techniques he concealed. The site includes a 30-ton telescope aligned to Polaris, near the North Star, and stone calendars marking solstices and equinoxes, suggesting astronomical knowledge. Ed published pamphlets like Magnetic Current from 1945, describing his theories of magnetism, including claims that he'd solved perpetual motion. The writings are vague, filled with cryptic diagrams. In 1936, Ed hired a truck to transport the stones 10 miles, but refused to let the driver watch loading or unloading. The driver reported returning to find stones already loaded, though Ed had no crane. Engineers like Coral Castle researcher Ray Stoner and physicist Kathleen Garvey have proposed Ed used leverage, counterweights, and precise balance points, but none have successfully replicated his largest lifts using only his visible tools. Civil engineers acknowledge Ed Leedskalnin was a skilled stonemason and self-taught engineer, but insist his achievements, while impressive, aren't supernatural. The prevailing theory is that he used basic mechanical advantage: levers, fulcrums, counterweights, and block and tackle systems. A single person can move enormous weights with proper leverage. Ancient Egyptians moved obelisks using wooden sleds, ramps, and hundreds of workers. But a clever individual with enough time and patience could theoretically do it alone. The secrecy was likely showmanship. Ed charged admission and cultivated mystery to attract tourists. His magnetic current writings are pseudo-scientific nonsense, mixing real physics terms with mystical gibberish. The precision of the 9-ton gate is impressive craftsmanship, but explainable by trial and error balancing. No anti-gravity, no lost ancient secrets, just hard work and clever physics. But that explanation struggles with the specifics. Leverage requires a fulcrum and a long lever arm. For a 30-ton stone, you'd need a lever 40 to 60 feet long and a fulcrum capable of supporting immense forces. Ed's photos show tripods maybe 15 feet tall, nowhere near sufficient, and leverage doesn't explain how he lifted stones vertically onto walls, which requires hoisting, not tipping. The block and tackle theory hits another problem. Even with pulley systems, one person can't generate enough force to lift 30 tons without a mechanical winch or dozens of pulleys, none of which appear in photos. Then there's the move to Homestead. Ed hired a single truck and driver, but refused to let the driver watch him load or unload the stones. The driver reported returning from errands to find multi-ton blocks already loaded. That's not leverage, that's something else. And his writings, while cryptic, aren't random. Ed Leeds Calnan built a flywheel generator still on display, claiming it tapped into magnetic currents. Engineers who've analyzed it can't determine its purpose. Was it functional tech or an elaborate distraction? What if Ed Leeds Calnan really did discover a technique for manipulating gravitational or magnetic forces on a small scale? His writings obsess over magnetism, describing it as fundamental to all energy. In the 1940s, before modern physics formalized electromagnetic theory, many inventors, including Tesla, experimented with ether and magnetic vortex concepts. Ed may have stumbled onto a practical application others dismissed. Alternatively, he could have used acoustic levitation, using sound waves to reduce the effective weight of objects. Soviet physicist Vladimir Gavrov experimented with infrasound in the 1960s, reporting objects vibrating and moving. If Ed's nighttime humming sounds reported by neighbors were low-frequency vibrations, he might have resonated the coral at its natural frequency, making it temporarily lighter. This sounds far-fetched, but coral is porous limestone. It could theoretically respond to specific frequencies. The simplest explanation is that Ed was just a brilliant, obsessive engineer who reinvented techniques the ancients used, and the mystery is our modern arrogance, assuming we know all the ways to move stone. Why did Ed Leeds Calnan never demonstrate his technique publicly, even when faced with financial hardship? If his method was conventional leverage, why can't modern engineers replicate his largest lifts using only his visible tools? What is the flywheel generator he built, and does it actually generate power, or was it part of a stone-moving technique? From stone moved by mysterious forces, we return to antiquity one final time, to a plant so effective it was harvested to extinction, taking its secrets with it. Top 10. Silphium. Silphium, the wonder plant that vanished, circa 600 years before the Common Era to 100 years of the Common Era. The coastal hills of Cyrenaica, modern Libya, where a single plant species was worth its weight in silver. Imagine a plant so valuable it appears on ancient coins. So effective as medicine, it's mentioned in dozens of medical texts, so prized by Roman emperors that it was served at imperial banquets as the ultimate luxury. This plant, Silphium, was the ancient world's most sought-after contraceptive, anti-inflammatory, and culinary spice. It grew wild in a narrow coastal region of North Africa, and for 700 years, it made the city-state of Shireen fabulously wealthy. Then around 100 CE, it vanished, not because of war or plague, but because humans harvested it faster than it could grow. We drove it to extinction and lost a botanical technology that could have revolutionized modern medicine. We don't even know what species it was. Silphium, Greek, Silphion, Latin, Laserpitium, was a plant native exclusively to Cyrenaica, modern-day eastern Libya. It first appears in historical records around 630 BCE when Greek colonists founded Cyrene. The plant couldn't be cultivated. It only grew wild in a 30-mile-wide coastal strip. Cyrenaic merchants exported it across the Mediterranean, where it became the most expensive spice in Rome. Pliny the Elder in Natural History from 77 CE wrote that a single stalk was worth its weight in silver. The last documented stalk was gifted to Emperor Nero around 5468 CE. By 100 CE, sources confirm it was extinct. Modern scholars debate its identity, possibly a species of giant fennel, Ephorula, or an entirely extinct genus. Silphium was described as a miracle plant, a contraceptive so reliable it controlled population growth, an anti-inflammatory used for everything from digestive issues to snake bites, and a culinary enhancer prized above saffron. If we could identify and resurrect it, it would revolutionize medicine and agriculture. Yet despite appearing on coins, in medical texts, and in historical accounts, we can't determine what it was. Thousands of plant species exist in the Mediterranean. None match all the described properties. Cyrenaic coins from the 6th to 1st century BCE depict silphium plants with heart-shaped seed pods and serrated leaves. The heart symbol may derive from silphium's shape. Pliny the Elder in Natural History Book 22 describes silphium as having a thick root, large stalk, and seeds that were powerful medicine. He notes it grew only in Cyrenaica, and attempts to cultivate it elsewhere failed. Hippocrates in the 5th century BCE mentions silphium as an abortifacient and contraceptive in medical texts, recommending it to prevent unwanted pregnancy, suggesting widespread knowledge of its contraceptive properties. Theophrastus, an inquiry into plants from the 4th century BCE, provides a botanical description, but notes it can't be farmed, only harvested wild, making it vulnerable to overharvesting. At its peak, silphium was taxed heavily by Cyrene, generating enormous wealth. Roman sources describe it as more valuable than silver per weight. Pliny reports the last known stalk was sent to Nero around 54 to 68 CE as a curiosity. By 100 CE, all sources confirm it no longer exists. Botanists have proposed Ferula tingitana, giant fennel from North Africa, Ferula druidiana, or Evax garganica as candidates, but none match all described properties: taste, contraceptive effect, habitat range, and appearance on coins. Historians and botanists generally accept that silphium was likely a species of giant fennel, Ferula genus, endemic to Cyrenaica. Its extinction is straightforward. It grew only in a narrow wild habitat, it couldn't be cultivated, and demand from Greece and Rome vastly exceeded natural regeneration rates. Overgrazing by livestock, Pliny mentions sheep eating it, accelerated its decline. This is a classic tragedy of the commons, a valuable resource harvested unsustainably until it collapsed. The reason we can't identify it definitively is that ancient botanical descriptions were imprecise, and without living specimens or preserved DNA, we're guessing based on morphology and habitat. Modern plants in the Ferula genus have medicinal properties, so silphium was probably just a particularly potent variety. No mystery, just human-caused extinction due to greed and ecological ignorance. But that narrative glosses over the specificity of what was lost. Silphium wasn't just useful medicine. It was, according to Cyrannus of Ephesus, a 2nd century gynecologist, the most effective contraceptive in the ancient world. He wrote that a dose the size of a chickpea taken monthly prevented pregnancy with near 100% reliability. If true, that's more effective than modern hormonal birth control, which has 91% typical use efficacy. We've never found another plant with that level of contraceptive potency. Modern Ferula species have anti-inflammatory compounds, ferulic acid, but none have demonstrated contraceptive effects remotely comparable to silphium's reported efficacy, which raises a disturbing question. What if silphium's extinction wasn't accidental, but deliberate? In the 1st century, Christianity was spreading across the Roman Empire, and early Christian doctrine opposed contraception. Could religious authorities have supported or accelerated silphium's eradication? Pliny notes the plant was already rare by Nero's reign, But Nero also persecuted Christians. The timing of its extinction, right as Christianity consolidated power, is suspicious. What if silphium isn't extinct, but misidentified? Some botanists, like Mahmut Miski in a 2021 study at Istanbul University, proposed that Ferula druidiana, a rare plant still growing in Turkey, might be silphium or a close relative. The plant's habitat, morphology, and chemical compounds match some ancient descriptions. If true, silphium's extinction might be exaggerated. It simply became unavailable to Roman markets after Cyrenaica's trade networks collapsed. Alternatively, the plant could have evolved or hybridized into a different species over 2,000 years, making modern identification difficult. Another theory is that silphium required specific mycorrhizal fungi, or soil bacteria, to thrive. And when those microbiomes were disrupted by agriculture and grazing, the plant couldn't regenerate even though seeds survived. This would explain why transplantation attempts mentioned by Pliny always failed. The knowledge of how to cultivate it may have existed, but was lost when Cyrene fell into decline after Rome annexed it in 96 BCE. Why haven't modern genetic studies attempted to extract DNA from ancient silphium seeds or residues on Cyrenaic coins? If silphium was such an effective contraceptive, why didn't ancient botanists prioritize cultivating it? Did religious or political forces suppress that effort? Could climate change or soil degradation in Cyrenaica have made the region uninhabitable for silphium, rendering resurrection attempts futile, even if we identify the species? From pyramids to plants, from fire that burned on water to glass that bent without breaking, these 10 technologies share a haunting pattern. They aren't isolated accidents. Greek fire, the Antikythera mechanism, Damascus steel, Roman concrete, starlight, flexible glass, Wardenclyffe, the Baghdad battery, Coral Castle, silphium, they form a pattern. Technologies that worked, technologies that could have changed the course of civilization, and technologies that vanished not because they failed, but because they succeeded in ways that threatened power, profit, or belief. The official story is always the same: resource depletion, economic impracticality, natural knowledge loss during political collapse. And sometimes that's true. But when you line up these 10 cases, the coincidences pile up. Greek fire's formula was so closely guarded it died with the Byzantine Empire, or was it deliberately erased to prevent enemies from acquiring it? The Antikythera mechanism represents a century of mechanical engineering that leaves no other trace. Did that knowledge vanish, or was it suppressed by a Roman culture that valued conquest over philosophy? Damascus steel required specific Indian ores that ran out, or did colonial disruption of trade routes kill the supply? Roman concrete's formula was forgotten, or did medieval Europe, fractured and impoverished, simply lack the resources to use it? Starlight's inventor refused to license it, or did he see what happens to inventors whose work threatens trillion-dollar industries? Tesla's Wardenclyffe Tower was impractical, or did J.P. Morgan kill it because decentralized free energy would destroy his monopoly? The Baghdad battery was accidental, or were ancient guild secrets never written down because knowledge was power? Ed Leedskalnin took his method to the grave, or did he try to tell us and we refused to listen? Silphium went extinct, or was it eradicated because effective contraception threatened patriarchal and religious control? History is written by the victors, but technology is written by the survivors. Every one of these innovations could have altered the trajectory of human civilization. Imagine a world where wireless power freed us from fossil fuels in 1920. Imagine buildings that lasted 2,000 years instead of 50. Imagine steel that couldn't be broken, glass that couldn't shatter, fire that couldn't be extinguished. Imagine a contraceptive so effective it gave ancient women control over their bodies. These weren't fantasies. They existed and they were erased. If these stories of lost innovations change how you view the history of human progress, please subscribe and like the channel. We are uncovering the history they tried to bury. Help us plant the seeds for the future. The next treasury of secrets will be opened soon.